Welcome to TSNN's monthly webinar series. Today's webinar will be Virtual Hybrid Events, What's Working and What's Not. Please submit questions for the panel by typing your question into the Ask a Question box at the bottom of the media player and hitting Submit, and then they will be addressed in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. I will now turn the floor over to Rob Hamlin. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody, for being on. This is a great topic, and we're really pleased to be a sponsor of this webinar. As Scott said, this is Rob Hamlin from Market Art, and you may know us. We make the You Are Here interactive map and directory system. And from our perspective, more and more of our clients are talking about virtual events, and they're looking for ways to leverage a 365 audience, or we're hearing a lot about offering topic-specific web events at specific times. So we're going to hear today from two leaders in the industry who've got a great deal of experience with virtual events and doing just that. But before we get to that, it's my job, my honor, to introduce our host, Michelle Bruno, who will be running the session today. I think probably more of you know Michelle. Michelle's a CMP, CEM. She's the president of Bruno Signature Events, which it's a content strategy firm, and they're based out in Salt Lake City. Michelle describes herself, this is sort of an interesting description, but she describes herself as someone who comes from the event industry and understands the trade show and conference ecosystem with a mission to chronicle the changes, innovation, technology, and digital evolution that's impacting the industry so profoundly. And maybe you've had a chance to see some of that work. She does an awful lot of writing, an awful lot of blogging, especially for TSNN, and I think to date she's published something over 150 articles and white papers just on meetings and exhibition logistics, marketing, technology for the event industry. She does a lot of work for Center of Exhibition Industry Research, CER, as well. Finally, she's also the co-producer. She knows a lot about virtual events herself. She's a co-producer of East Virtual, and that's a one-day face-to-face workshop on how to execute a virtual event strategy. And that's going to take place at the ASAE Conference Center in D.C. on March 21st, if anybody's interested. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to your host and moderator, Michelle Bruno. Michelle?
Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate that introduction. I want to also take the time to thank OnStream Media, who is our other sponsor today. The company's latest innovation, Marketplace 365, is a leading virtual event and online community platform that is specifically designed for today's trade show organizers and is the technology being utilized to host and stream our Trade Show Connect webinar series. So what you're seeing right now is the Marketplace 365 tool. And just to give you a little bit of a rundown of what we're going to do today, we've got our two speakers. We'll start first with Mary Beth McCucci, and it's my pleasure to introduce her now. She is the Director Distance Education for HIMSS, the largest U.S. not-for-profit healthcare association focused on providing global leadership for the optimal use of information technology. Mary Beth also brings extensive association and education experience to HIMSS, where she leads HIMSS distance education programming, including the HIMSS Virtual Conference and Expo, e-learning academy, and online resource of educational materials and courses and webinars. Before joining HIMSS, Mary Beth was Manager Program Services for the Radiological Society of North America, where she coordinated the educational program for the world's largest medical meeting of 60,000 attendees and managed the program office at the RSNA annual conference. If you want to also submit questions online on Twitter, our hashtag for today is hashtag TSNN. After Mary Beth speaks, we'll introduce Kenji Haratunian, who will also speak. So, Mary Beth, we're looking forward to what you have to say. Take it away.
Oh, thank you very much, Michelle. I am pleased to be here today. What I wanted to show you is really talk about what HIMSS is doing in their virtual events and, if you will, how we build our communities one computer at a time. So I just wanted to touch base on our learning objectives today and what I hope that you will get out of this presentation. I don't want to necessarily read my slides to you, but, I think it's important when you're planning an event, whether it's a face-to-face or a virtual event, that you really do understand how it's going to meet your organizational goals and mission, as well as staffing resources, which are a huge component to the virtual events. It's not just one or two people doing this. It really does take an entire army to pull these off. And then finally, some of, from my perspective, what is the real truth about virtual events? So I have, on my next slide here, hopefully I went to the right one, is a little quote. You know, if we're growing, we're always going to be out of our comfort zone. And I think when an organization starts going into the virtual arena, I think it is many times out of their comfort zone. I am very lucky to have an executive management team that has been proponents of virtual events since at least 2007, and that's when we did our first VCE, our virtual conference and expo. And one of the things that, you know, I just wanted to remind everybody or just let everybody know, in my opinion, that, you know, a lot of times, these are still new events, and it is a little, you know, it's difficult to be in your comfort zone and start going outside of that. But the one thing to remember is that, you know, utilizing this is that, you know, years ago the Internet was unknown and email was unknown, and all of these things are now mainstream into our lives. And I think that virtual events will be mainstreamed into many of our face-to-face and all of our programming that we look at in the future. In fact, our Vice President of Meeting Services, who is responsible for our annual conference, our face-to-face annual conference, was at a recent convention where some of our key exhibitors were stating that they would never, in the future, they will only be exhibiting at a face-to-face meeting if there's a virtual component, because there is such a huge audience that they want to reach that doesn't attend, you know, the live face-to-face meetings. So, what are some of the HIMSS strategies for virtual events? And there are really three areas that we believe that, which is why we chose to expand into our virtual. One is to really reach our audience in a more dynamic way. We wanted, part of our mission, the HIMSS mission, is to provide better health care through health information technology. And in doing so, we want to educate more people. By offering virtual events, we are able to do that in a much faster manner and actually reach a much larger audience. We wanted to go beyond that in-person experience and really bring in now our social media world into this arena. And finally, which I find is a very key factor, is to diversify revenue. You know, not to have all of our revenue in our annual face-to-face event, because in the association world, you know, you could have a bad year, and we certainly want to make sure from an organizational perspective that we're diversifying all of our revenues across the company. So what we have done is, since the conception of our virtual conference in 2007, is we've actually expanded our offerings now, where we offer not only our virtual conference and exhibition, but we offer one-day sponsored virtual briefings. We do webinars, which are just one webinar shot off a day, and our virtual briefings are actually anywhere from 3 to 4 webinars that are in an event shell that one can go in and still network, and we have resource opportunities, and I'll show you some of those screenshots later, as well as doing our hybrid event. In this last month, we offered our first hybrid event with our face-to-face conference, and I will go through and talk about that as we move on in the presentation. So, moving on to the goal of the virtual events. What I mentioned just a moment ago is really understanding our mission and making sure that we are reaching out to our members and non-members to help them understand and educate them in health information technology, which ultimately will provide better health care for anyone. And it's just one of those things that it's, you know, again, as I stated, I'm very lucky that I have an executive management team that supports these initiatives. Going down, what I wanted to do now is really review the components of what our virtual events are. And in this presentation, I've kind of morphed into some of our virtual events all into one, so you can see just how we do things. As I mentioned, we have virtual briefings, which are one-day events. They are a one-sponsored event. We have anywhere from 3 to 4 webinars taking place in there. We have a networking lounge. We have which allows chat capability as well as resources and tote bags. We always invite social media in here. And in our virtual conferences and our hybrid event, we also have prizes and games, really incentive programs that I think actually help our audience stay engaged and keep them coming back. All of our conferences are open anywhere from 30 to 90 days after they conclude. In our virtual conference and our hybrid event, we did have an exhibit floor. You can have our vendors can come in and upload documents. You can download these items. You can watch webinars from their booths. You can chat with them. There's resources, white papers, a whole host of items that one can go in and look at an exhibitor. And then, of course, our resource center, we're compiled by topic areas you can research and look at. And as I briefly mentioned, obviously the tote bag, because you can't go to a conference without getting a tote bag. So the first slide I want to show you is this is what our opening conference looks like when you walk in. And as you can see, we have engaged social media with Facebook. We also have Twitter that's linked in, that is in this system. And we have our own virtual hashtag for all of our events. Our vendor will be incorporating LinkedIn soon into the component that we want to use. So in our next couple shows, we will be introducing the LinkedIn component. Another thing to notice on here is that with this vendor, we find them to be very flexible and helping us monetize our event. And on the bottom right-hand side where it says visit our booth, and then we have some HIMSS sponsored ads, but those are all rotating ads that one can utilize to, again, monetize your event or help to drive traffic to a certain area. All these, I believe, are very important in the components when you're planning out your event. Now, my next slide, I wanted to go into our education center. And in here you can see we have, this lists a couple days of events. This is coming from our 2-day virtual conference where we have live sessions. They do run concurrently, and we've had up to 3 concurrent sessions going at one time, and have since gone back to 2. 3 we found to be a little much from a staff perspective, but yet still very successful for us. And the one thing I can tell you is that when you're planning an event, the education is key. You really need to have strong education because it will always drive your audience. We have certainly seen from some of our shows where we'll have an extremely hot speaker at the time, and our attendance skyrockets because they want to meet and they want to interact with that speaker. And we do 90%, well, I actually say more, almost all of our presentations are live with live interaction afterwards, live Q&A, and then we also invite our speakers back to our networking lounge to continue conversations, still driving and pushing that education. Now, we do some on-demand. We do tend to have some of our vendor sessions have been on-demand in the past. And once in a while, we'll have a speaker who cannot make a presentation, and we will record it prior to the event and then have somebody representing them to do the live Q&A during the event. So we always want to encourage that live interaction. As I mentioned just a minute ago, we actually ask our speakers to come back to our networking lounge. And in here what you'll see is this is just a conversation that we've captured from our networking lounge. We review this content. There's often what we find in these threaded discussions are areas of focus that our attendees want, and we can take education ideas from here and expand them into a full-blown webinar or a virtual briefing, some sort of event for them afterwards. Again, there's monetization on the left-hand side opportunities, and then if there were people in this one, I had taken my screen capture, you would have seen the names of individuals who are in the current networking lounge on the right-hand side. So one of the things, or another one of the items that we are big proponents are really incentives and driving engagement through the environment. And so we have a prize or a game area depending on our environment that we're doing. We normally will give away an iPad or a Kindle or something to incentivize people to be engaged. We do things from, if you go to a presentation, if you go visit an exhibitor, if you start a chat, accept a chat, et cetera, you can earn points and then get into, and then ultimately win a prize. And we've seen dialogue amongst our attendees almost back and forth, like, oh, I'm almost there, I've got so many points, I'm going to beat you, which is, jovial, but it's engaging that audience, which is a, key component to the success of this. And one of the new features that we added at our hybrid event this year was a true game, and we put in a golf game. It was called Puzzle Putt, and it was very hard, let me tell you. I still cannot figure out how to win this thing. But all of the words that one would have to solve were about hymns. And this would be another opportunity for monetization where you could have a vendor come in and the Puzzle Putt could be about them. This vendor has a few more different types of games. There's a match game and a trivia game, and I'm sure more are coming down the pike. But again, this is a way to really engage your audience, and we had quite a few people in here and very positive comments in running this. So we were very pleased for that. Moving along, I wanted to show you what our exhibit floor looks like. And this is just one view of what we could do. And you can see that the booths are really just their logos. We're getting away from more flash because we want this to be more mobile friendly. And so you can see what we've done, and here are an example of some of our exhibitors. And when you get into a booth, by clicking on their logo, you will be able to see that there is quite a few opportunities for the vendor to really put their products out there. You can chat, you can have links out to different websites or items that are important. You can put in, I think I mentioned before, white papers and resources, and all of those also can be tied back to the overall resource center that people can come in and sort by a topic area. All of this as well is captured for the vendor, so they can utilize what has happened in this environment afterwards through their data portal. And that's an important component to remember, is that, lead generation is critical for our vendors, and also being able to get those, feel through those conversations and really find that qualified lead that might, help them get their return on their investment. So what I wanted to go next to is our social media area, and I briefly touched about this when I was on our landing page. We did have Facebook front and center, but there was a little tab for social media, and when you populate it up, you can see that we have Twitter on here. If it's not on here now, because my eyes are too small, I can't see anything anymore, but Facebook will be in here, can be put in here, as well as LinkedIn moving forward. And again, social media is such a key component in driving that organic growth to these events. And I'll touch on that a little bit later as we move through the presentation on some of that. And the last thing I just wanted to show you with actually in the environment is something that is a brand new feature to our virtual event vendor, and that's this badge system where one can go in and earn achievements. And I have found that we got very, very positive feedback from this because people want to see, as they're going through, their little badges next to their name. And the more who has more badges has done more items and is more engaged. And there are a variety of different areas you can choose from and actually create your own areas. And it's just, again, another key component is to engage those attendees. So as I move forward, I wanted to talk about some of the challenges and solutions that all of us would face in doing a virtual event. And one of the very first things is certainly the technology. We are all on computers. We all know computers have problems at some point. And, one of the things that we do is we really try to put in place our redundancies to avoid issues. The checking, the double checking that we always do. We have backups. We make sure our presenters have handouts printed out opposed to just counting on their computer. We have had, I've often had presenters who might, whatever reason, can't get in through a firewall. Their phone connection's not working. We have redundancies put in place to make sure that we can get them in and avoid any time lapse or any area that one might have trouble, where we can't get the speaker in. I think in my time since I've been doing this, I've only had one speaker who hasn't been able to present, and that was because there was a fire in her building and she had to evacuate. So that's certainly understandable, but we really have been very successful in creating that. And, of course, our learners, especially when you start with a new platform, can have issues. But as we continue to do our virtual conferences utilizing our same platform, there is consistency. We get a lot of repeat users. And our learner complaints, if you will, have gone down tremendously. And we've seen very little issues, and so we're really pleased with that. And then a very key component I was actually talking about earlier today is the audience. And content is key. Content is going to certainly drive your audience to your event. But one thing that you need to be very careful and very thoughtful is, are you getting the right audience for your vendors? I have said numerous times that I would rather have 100 of the right audience than 1,000 of the wrong. It is so critical to get that right audience, those decision makers, those who can actually help your vendors make their return on investment. And that is something that, sometimes our executive management just want to see those high registration numbers, but if we're looking at a sales perspective, because if those vendors are actually supporting your event, you want to make sure in the long run that they have the right audience and that they're going to get that return on investment, because that is going to make you have that continued success as you move on. And then the other big challenge that we see in the industry is marketing, and truly we do so much marketing over email, and there are so many opt-out rates that we have experienced, HIMSS that is, that what we need to do is really work on developing that organic growth. And some of that is through social media, which I mentioned before. So that's just some of these things that we've experienced and how we're trying to work on those and resolve some of those issues. In some of my learning objectives, I had mentioned staffing and allocations, and I just wanted to show you just a quick thumbnail of what we look at when we are planning our events. I have 2 full-time staff members who work on our virtual events, and we do over 12 events a year, and we actually see that continuing to grow, and my staff certainly might grow on that. But we also engage many other areas from the HIMSS organization to help us be successful. And actually some of our departments have grown just from our sheer success and adding in social media, full-time employees as well as marketing. So all of these things are to consider when you're doing your event. Briefly, I just wanted to talk about content integrity. And as I said before, content is king. It is so incredibly important to ensure that you have good, high-end content in there, because you want to have those audience-driven there, and you want to make sure that they are engaged, and this is something that they are looking for. So we do quite a few things. I mean, we have, we do a call for papers. We do have our content is accredited, and we just, we also encourage chats and dialogue outside of the education to continue that push of driving our content. Also, our exhibits, again, just that I really want to emphasize that, leads are so important, and getting that right audience in is so critical for your success. Really focus on those few people that can make that investment to your vendor. And if you do that, you are going to see success. You are going to see long-term success and not just one-off shows. So just to let you know on that. And then I just wanted to go through some of our analysis, and I wanted to show you that one slide in particular that we found extremely interesting when we started pulling this data, that our leads from our booth were actually higher in the virtual event than at our face-to-face conference. And to me, that is such a huge selling factor. We're getting those right people into the right audience, and we're actually getting more than our face-to-face. Which I'm sure, conference team doesn't want me to exaggerate, but this is such a good thing for us. And just again, to give you that lead that virtual conferences are here. They are here to stay. They are driving revenue. And they will actually, in your long run, especially when you're doing hybrid events, they will drive people to your face-to-face. They are not going to cannibalize your event. And I'll touch on that later, but that's a key component to remember, that really they will not cannibalize a face-to-face event. This slide, I just wanted to point out a couple things, is that, our registered attendee events, they average about 56%, which we feel is good. We would love to see that higher. But still over 50% is a relatively good number, so we're pleased with that. And one of the other things that we have noted is that our non-member rate is actually higher than our member rate. So we have been able to take that per population and start to seek out membership for them, which ultimately helps out the organization. In our event marketing plan that we do, we do so much email focus. We have found tremendous success with Google Ads and Facebook. We have updated our website. We make it more engaging and have really focused. We now actually have a HIMSS virtual event page that we can work on and develop and help define what we're doing. And we have found a lot of good success and a lot of verified rates coming in from there and registering. We are able to very quickly, with the team that we have at HIMSS, update information on the website, and virtual events are also something that when we get new regulations out in my area, in my realm of world, the health IT area, we had the meaningful use regulations that were released about 2 weeks ago, and yesterday we had a virtual event that we found to be extremely successful. We ended up having 7 sessions, which was a very long day, but again, we're able to get out in a very quick time and reach a large audience to get this information out there, ultimately meeting the mission of what HIMSS is looking at. One thing I want to make sure I touch on is that our marketing toolkit for both speakers and our exhibitors is that we want to make sure that we reach out to them and engage them and train them in the environment to help make them more successful as they're meeting their potential sales, if you will. But make sure they understand how to work within the virtual environment. We have done some surveys in the past, and I just want to, I know I'm taking some time, so I want to quickly go through these, is that one of the things that we came out of our most recent survey was that they wanted more access to our speakers, which is why we invite them back to the networking lounge. They wanted to really have evening hours added to their sessions because a lot of our people are working during the day. We have clinicians that cannot get away from the day. So we did add evening hours, which were successful. We go back and forth on those just because I think we had too much education probably for our attendees, but going down and paring that down a little has shown to be very successful for us. And then I wanted to touch as well on our social media, as I mentioned briefly before, but just to let you know that how much it has increased. You can see the dramatic increase from 2009 to 2011. Again, make sure you're engaging social media into your marketing efforts. You will see organic growth from this. You will see audiences coming in and be very happy with that. And just Google and Twitter and Facebook are certainly very active for us. We do buy ads on those in that area, in that space, and have seen a lot of success on that. And my last slide, I just wanted to touch base on the quote "real truth" that I wanted to just drill into everybody. But again, content is king. You have to have good content. Content will drive that audience. You want to make sure you engage them. You want to train not only your attendees, but also your sponsors. The networking area has shown for us to be extremely positive and been able to drive content from there for future events, as well as incentivizing your attendees. Another key component is to meet that sponsor's needs. Again, I'd rather have 100 of the right audience than 1,000 of the wrong. You will get a better return on investment for your vendor and ultimately have long-term renewals with them. Very key component. And then this, your virtual event will not cannibalize your face-to-face. I am a firm believer of that. Our CEO and president is a firm believer of that. And I know from experience, I know from talking to my colleagues, that often is a deterrent with your attendees or with your staff. People do feel that it is going to cannibalize. It just won't. Statistics have proven that in many areas and many different programs that do face-to-face. So just I'll leave you with that it will actually probably increase your attendance at your face-to-face. And so with that, Michelle, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mary Beth. That was really fabulous information. I am going to now introduce Kenji Haratunian with Nielsen. He is a 25-year veteran of the active outdoor industry, working for many years in store management and skills instruction during and after completing his degree at UCLA. I don't think we want to mention the year there, Kenji, do we? In 1999, he began working for Outdoor Retailer and is now vice president for Nielsen Expositions, directing the entire outdoor sports group. Kenji has been instrumental in developing industry-focused programs like the Business Community Zones, the Project OR Design Competition, Green Steps, and the OR Virtual Design Center, which help attract core athletes, media, and designers to the show and add to the bottom line. Kenji is obviously from the for-profit space as opposed to Mary Beth from the non-profit space, although she will hasten to correct me saying that they need to make a profit on their virtual events. But Kenji, I hear there's a lot of granola that you go through at your Outdoor Retailer events, but other than that, let's hear about your virtual experience.
Hey, thanks, Michelle, and thanks for everybody showing up and being interested in this topic. It is fascinating, and I thought Mary Beth's presentation was really great. I was scribbling wildly during that presentation, so thanks, Mary Beth. So I'll try to move quickly through my deck here, and we have only done one virtual event, so we're much earlier than Mary Beth and HIMSS when it comes to the curve of learning and establishing that we're a leader or at least a player in the virtual event space. So our first event was in December of 2010, so it was about a year and a few months ago, and we struck out in this direction because we really felt, for one, that there are a number of communities, business communities, in the outdoor recreation space that are underserved through the major trade shows that we run, Outdoor Retailer primarily. Winter and summer are big trade shows. They happen in Salt Lake City twice a year. And there are communities, though, that are somewhat not focused on there. It's really a buyers and sellers event, and this whole design and supply community is an important aspect to the industry, but not really focused on at the show. So we thought, with all the development in green technology and sustainable business models that is really important to our industry, that we could focus on that and really dial in on that element of the industry and deliver something unique and establish position for our brand when it came to using digital tools and encouraging our audience. So that's kind of the first step in the whole process, was to just assess your marketplace and see what needs there might be that aren't being served at the national shows or at the once or twice a year shows that you have. So we identified that sector. That content is king statement is really important. I think that Mary Beth had shared that without the strong education platform, it's hard to find a compelling reason for an audience person to take their time, even though they may not be flying on a plane or driving in a car and parking and going to your event live. They still have to take their time and make it worthwhile. So delivering a compelling content is key. Producing a virtual format, finding the right technology partner is really what that means. And I think the opportunity also is to reach beyond your current audience. So, for example, in the case of the Virtual Design Center, we reach beyond the design community that partakes and builds products for outdoor recreation into a lot of other realms where people might be interested in, for example, sustainable fabric sourcing for bedding or drapery or medical, or lots of different tangential markets that could have interest in this what is really a sports marketplace, but a lot of application across the board. And then to just involve as many high-profile people from the industry that you can also drives that interest, back to Mary Beth's point. This is just a slide that shows a little bit about the underserved community, and Project OR is a design competition that we developed 2 or 3 years ago to also serve this community. We don't put the supply community out on the main floor. They're kind of hidden in meeting rooms and hallways. If you've ever been to Outdoor Retailer, you'll know what I'm talking about. They primarily are meeting appointment driven, so they don't put up as many flashy, really A-level booths. They're really just trying to meet with key design personnel and sourcing professionals that get the business done. But there's hundreds of millions of dollars that get written at the show in these quiet backwater areas. So just to call more attention to that story, there's a lot of innovation in the outdoor industry, and we're trying to give that group a lot more attention, even if we're not giving them front and center locations. The next piece, once you've determined who your audience really is and what your topics are going to be, are to set the objectives. Is this, for example, a profit model? Are you trying to use this to make money as a separate revenue stream, or does this have another strategic goal in mind? In our case, for example, we wanted to break even, but it wasn't really the goal to make money off of this per se. It was to serve this underserved community from the show, and also build our acumen as a digital force to be reckoned with. So it actually supported other digital products that we have, whether that's run-of-site advertising or a new hub project that we have that's more of a 24/7 environment. Those kind of objectives may not be penciled out as profit at the end of the event, but they do. For example, in this case, we drove our designer audience of the live event up 54%. So we had a huge increase in designers attending the show, and we could attribute back at least some of it to this virtual design center that we did between the shows. This is just a shot from kind of the entry area of our virtual design center. Obviously, the three elements were the seminars, the exhibit halls, and the networking lounge. So pretty similar to what Mary Beth had described. The seminars were obviously the draw. So we tried to put up many high-profile stories. There was the Eco Index launch that had just happened. So the Outdoor Industry Association, who's our main association partner, drove that. We had the Textile Exchange and a number of other presenters that are high-profile in the outdoor industry. This is just simply the content plan. So who were we going to put up as speakers? How were we going to position this and promote it to the audience of the outdoor industry as well as beyond to the greater design world? Some of the highlights on this might be we did not do it in the truly live format like we're doing this presentation now, for example, or it sounds like Mary Beth and HIMSS does that in the live format. We did it as a pre-recorded presentation or panel presentation and then opened it to Q&A afterwards. So that we were a little bit afraid that there might be some glitches in a truly live format. But, of course, this was a year and a half ago, and there's a lot more confidence in the live platform now, I think. Let's see. I think that's pretty much it. I think that we'll get around at the end to some lessons learned about the technology partner and what to expect from them. Being our first time, we had a lot to learn. In the next slide, this is basically the timeline of developing and launching a virtual event, at least in the Nielsen platform that we developed some years ago. So it starts around 18 weeks out. You have a kind of go, no-go at about 12 weeks out. You have a deadline for sales about 4 weeks out, and then everything starts coming together toward the end. So you can post one of these up much more quickly than you can a live event, which has to be planned, many more months out in advance. So you can react to developments in the industry. You can react to trends and changes that may have to do with government regulation or with new legislation that's out there, as well as development and innovation in your industry. The agenda that we put together basically had 4 major themes around the design of outdoor products. I don't know if I can read this small, but designing for sustainability, the Eco Index beta version, sustainability throughout the supply chain, and trends in natural fibers. Those are the four topics. So this might be called a webinar cluster, for example, that we produced in a one-day format, and so it's pretty less ambitious, I would say, than Mary Beth and the HIMSS group, but this was compelling to a core group of designers in the outdoor industry. As an example of the booth, we did have a booth setup. I know there are other virtual events that don't use virtual exhibits or booth clusters, but we did have this, and we had about 17 or so exhibits in the space. So again, not huge, but very core. And they were clustered in halls that were, you could break them out into halls based on what their category is. For example, fabric suppliers, finished and trim suppliers, and technology providers, or something like that. The seminar platform looked like an auditorium like this, and each of the presentations had a pretty robust deck that created that visual interest. And then the lounge area looked somewhat like the lounge area that HIMSS had. We did not have nearly as much activity in the networking lounge, and I think that the secret to that is that we didn't do as much for engaging that audience in the networking area. So gamifying that area or creating these incentives to participate, I think that's a really key thing if you want people to network proactively. You've got to draw them into that space. This is an example of the back end. So when an exhibitor goes in, Mary Beth talked about educating the exhibitors as well as the audience and your speakers. We very much had to handhold our exhibitors in how to set up a virtual exhibit. So this is their back-end access. This is how they got in and were able to get into their screens and do their different presentations, put up their papers, downloadable PDFs, run video, etc. And then the content of the Virtual Design Center started with, well, these are just some of the content pieces. I'll just kind of rifle through this. But these are folks that are known to the outdoor industry and that have a stake in sustainability, sustainable products, and services. And this is the Green Reach aspect that was showing the life cycle of products and how this is going to feed into some of the other content, like the eco-index determination that's a little bit later on. Here's a shot from that same Green Reach element of the seminars. And just, I think this is an important slide just because you want to make sure that, sorry. You want to make sure that you're giving people places to go afterwards because maybe they're taking notes or they're going to get the deck afterwards. Give them somewhere to go to really dig deeper into the content topic that you've delivered. And at the end, the post-event analysis is really important, and that's something that will help us determine what to do next, where to go in the future. And that's true of your live event, and it's true of your virtual event as well. So what worked, what didn't work, what do you want to, what objectives didn't get met, what were the home runs, or what were the successes that you had, etc. For us, the post-event metrics, we had 550 attending the event over the time we had it open. So it was a one-day event that you could participate live, and then it was archived for 6 weeks. And there were, so these are some of the metrics. You don't have to go over each of them, but we had some hundreds of people in the environment, not thousands. And I think that we had expected a little bit more than this and maybe had overpromised a little bit to the exhibitors or the sponsors of the event. There were 230 video views. There were features written on this in the industry, in the textile trade, as well as in the outdoor industry about this first virtual event. And we provided the attendee list, which was a good mix, speaking back to Mary Beth's comment about the quality of the attendee. That was really important, and we delivered a very high-quality audience to the exhibitors and sponsors of our event, of our first time. Let's see if I can get further down here. No. Sorry about that. Okay. So the lessons learned from the Virtual Design Center were that, first of all the rules of live event management apply to the virtual environment. Everything you do for a live event, from registration to post-event analysis, has to be done in the virtual space as well, with the addition of a little bit more hand-holding for setting up exhibits and a little less resource when it comes to operations teams. So we have a big operations team here that really helps run the show and create that service manual and contact points, and we don't have that in the virtual space. So Mary Beth mentioned it takes a fairly large army to pull this off, and we found that to be true as well. We didn't break even, but we came close enough to want to do this again, and we would tweak some dials and make some do it a little bit differently the next time we go, which will probably be later this year in the fall. And then back to the bandwidth we talked about. Okay. Sorry about that. I think these are just some of the takeaways. I think one of the key things is we really want it to be archived for a longer time, and our technology partner just wasn't set up to be able to deliver that experience. I think that that's an important thing, to be able to access information like this and education in a more open environment for as long as we want to keep it. Registration was definitely more difficult than it needed to be. I think that was a key takeaway, that they were operating, they meaning the technology partner, were operating on a best practices or most current practice model, and it was a pretty high bar to get over to register, including you had to have a special character, and it had to be 9 characters long, and a lot of extra work for someone to just want to register for this virtual event. So I'm interested to learn more if Mary Beth has a comment there, but we did drive a 58% increase in designer attendees at our live event, so to the point that you may be concerned that you're going to cannibalize your event, our experience was, in fact, the opposite. And I think sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly with your sponsors and exhibiting partners sets you up to be able to do it better the next time, and so we shared that full metrics report with everyone, and we did give all the exhibitors the contact list from the event. So with that, I think I'll hand it back over to Michelle.
Thank you so much, Kenji. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That was fantastic information. We're going to go into a Q&A mode. I've got a couple of questions for both Mary Beth and Kenji. I know, Mary Beth, you have to leave at the top of the hour. So I want you first, Mary Beth, to address the dark side. Were there any lessons that you learned that you can share, and what would you never, ever do again?
Well, that's an excellent question. Yes, we refer to our side as the dark side, and we're not the Jedi, so. But, yeah, one of the things I can tell you, we did a hybrid event with our annual conference in February, and I found it to be really interesting. A couple of the things that we struggled with, where there were some of my colleagues who did feel that this would hurt the conference, the face-to-face conference. And so in the initial development stage, they were, if you will, hiding the event, putting it on the very back end for marketing purposes. And, it wasn't until our executive management came in and changed it that did we start to see some differences. So, even though, as I mentioned, I have my CEO is very much a proponent of this, we still have to make sure the rest of the staff who has ownership of other products and when we involved to our annual, that they believe that as well. And it's that to me I found to be a challenging area where we were running into issues with our team on how to market it. So one thing I would absolutely say is in-your-face marketing. You need to get it out there. You need to market it alongside of everything else because it just, as Kenji had said, and I was just smiling when he said it, it will not hurt your face-to-face meeting. It's only going to increase that attendance. And I have talked to many different vendors, and with all of their clients, we have never, and talked to other clients, I've never heard one person say it has ever hurt their face-to-face meeting. So I just think that's one thing is really kind of that marketing needs to be out there, front and center.
Great. Kenji, tell me about your staffing pains when you did your event. And specifically, how did you divide up responsibilities among your lean and mean staff for selling the virtual booths? How did that go down?
Well, I think that we were best positioned in sales to handle the extra load. These are mostly clients that we already have communication with regards to the main show, so this is just an additional conversation similar to, say, sponsorship or run-of-site advertising or putting together packages for the supplier or raw materials exhibitors of Outdoor Retailer. Where we really felt the pain was in marketing and the intangibles of operations that still exist in the virtual environment, but my operations team here is not equipped to be able to fulfill. So you really lean on your marketing staff, your art staff, and the technology provider to really fill in the gaps, and that is a sizable rift, I would say, in communications between us and the technology provider. We didn't realize that it was going to be that much extra work. And you're right, I did at the time especially have a skeleton marketing team, and it really was a backbreaker for them because so much had to be put out. It really had to be an event separately marketed, even though it was part of the Outdoor Retailer suite of products. It was a ground-up effort, just like starting a trade show.
Great. I want to let everyone know there's a lot of questions about where the presentation will be available, and it will be available at tsnn.com on the webinars page, both the slides and the audio. Mary Beth, someone's asking what technology, actually Christine Hawks from MRA Services, is asking you what technology do you use for delivering your educational sessions and also for virtual expos?
For our virtual expo, we use InExpo. We have found to be their platform to be very flexible with us and pricing standpoint as well as what they can do. What's interesting, and Kenji touched on this, is the on-demand access sessions. And my company, HIMSS, has a very robust contract with WebEx, and WebEx is able to be utilized in an expo. So we use WebEx and are able to have an on-demand access as long as we have a contract with WebEx. And I don't see that going away in the near future. And what we do is when we are done with the event, we actually transfer all of our content into our learning management system, which is a third platform that we manage. But we have it there for our members and non-members to access, up to 5. We've had content in there that's at least 5 years old. So people can go back and if they're looking for content, they can find it.
So, Mary Beth, because I know you've got to run, I've got one more question for you, or stay as long as you like. What impact on sponsorship revenue have your virtual events had? How do you justify the virtual ROI to sponsors? Any decrease in sponsorship revenue at the physical events?
Not at the physical events, not at all. We have not had any impact from there. We have had, from the virtual side, ups and downs. We have, and for a variety of reasons. Some vendors just come in and try it once. Some vendors have been to our shows 4 or 5 times and then they stop. It's always a concern of ours when we get those renewals and they do stop. And what we are trying to do is, I think there was a time when we did a lot of let's just get that audience in. It didn't matter who they were, and that has impacted us later in shows because those vendors are not getting the return on investment. So we have taken a very conscious effort to reach that right audience and are doing things to get those vendors back in, attract new vendors, and keep the current vendors that we have. And really listening, surveying them, calling them on the phone. What can we do to make you successful? And then listening and really putting that in play.
Mary Beth, I'm going to ask you one more question before we've got to run. The question of, ROI, profitability, things like that come up. So I've got kind of a two-part. Can you address what's the insight you have on what virtual events can yield in profit when they execute correctly? And there's a specific question here from Michael Culhane from Fastlane about what price exhibitors paid and what the ROI was based on leads generated. It's kind of a touchy one. You don't have to be specific, but I'm wondering if you could talk about profitability and ROI.
Sure. Well, what we have found, we have different types of events, and one of the things that we did this year, we decided to test different types of things that we could do. And from that, we have seen some shows be very successful and others not so much. We still have, I can be honest with you and tell you that our hybrid event did not make revenue this year. That being said, it was the first time we've ever done it, a hybrid event. And so we are planning to do it next year, and we're planning to put changes in place to make a profit. Our other events, what we have found, surprisingly, we were very excited that our virtual briefings, which are they just don't cost as much to do as what we term a virtual conference because of the exhibit floor. We don't have an exhibit floor. It's just sponsorship. We have found those to be very profitable. It does not cost us much. It doesn't cost us within reason, and not taking into staff time. But we can make they're easier to put on, faster to do, and we can make a nice little profit off of that. With our lead generation and the ROIs on that, it's all dependent on the vendor. And one of the things that my sales team is doing is that actually we're in the process of going out and actually making those phone calls. Because our last virtual conference, while still profitable, was not as profitable in the past. And we want to make sure that that's just a one-time fluke and that we continue to build these. Because we have seen our virtual briefings, these little one-day vignettes, extremely successful. So, we're reaching out on that. We do show that our leads are, from the ones that are coming into these booths, are higher than our annual conferences, our face-to-face. And so we utilize that information, and we do touch base to find out what the return on investment was with our vendors. I know that, I think it was last June, we actually had a vendor who was so pleased with us because they made like a $2.5 million sale based on a lead they got from RVCE. And so we were thrilled with that, and we use that as marketing tool and making sure, again, driving that right audience to the show so we can get those returns. But it's always a learning process, and it's always something that we're engaging those vendors to make sure that we're meeting those needs. So it's almost not just a one-time thing. You've got to keep changing with the technology and changing with those vendor needs. We're always in flux. And to me, I enjoy that. I enjoy those changes and making sure we keep up with the times.
Well, thanks so much, Mary Beth. I know you got to run. Kenji, I hope you can hang out a little bit. And thank you so much, Mary Beth from HIMSS. It was a wonderful presentation. And Mary Beth, just so that you know, has graciously agreed to answer any questions that we get that aren't addressed on the webinar. So have a great day, Mary Beth. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Kenji, there's a couple of questions around, dealing with the platform provider. First of all, Eric Siemens from All Baby and Child Corp is asking, did you do the hand-holding for virtual booth design, or was this subcontracted? And I'm also curious about, did you have expectations when you were dealing with your platform provider about what you would do, what they would do, and how did that work out at the end of the day?
I think that to the earlier question about the hand-holding, I think there was a shared responsibility on that. The technology provider did do some of it, but when it came to sort of the simple communications and how they were going to get exposed in the marketing and how this was going to be cast, that was more in our in our realm. So it was a combination of both of us. We were doing, obviously, the selling and the bringing in of the sponsors and exhibitors, so working with them as a middle person between that and the hardcore technology provider questions. It turns out that there weren't that many hardcore technology provider questions. It was mostly about the marketing and expectations and the basic blocking and tackling of producing the event.
So, Kenji, what's on your wish list for adding new virtual hybrid event elements to the end-user experience? Going down the road for you at the Outdoor Retailer Group?
Well, I think since we did this, and I should have said earlier that Nielsen had produced through PDN, which is the Photo District News, so that's a photography-based trade show property that is quasi-consumer as well as B2B. So they had great successes early on with virtual events. I think they were using On24, but it kind of petered out. They ran out of steam pretty quickly, and I think that's the part that Mary Beth was just talking about, was continuing to deliver compelling content show after show or event after event is really the key. And I think that's where PDN doesn't really do virtual events now. They do webinars, and they've changed their model around it. So we had originally chosen our tech partner based on their use of the technology partner, and so I think that what my wish list would be to be working with a partner that is a little more involved in the not just providing the technology platform and then walking away, but helping to facilitate the marketing of it, the promotion of it, the reporting from it in a more active way, and also to keep that environment alive longer in some form. So even if it goes dormant or it goes into archive as a PDF or something, some way to keep it alive. I found that it was a bummer that it disappeared, after 6 weeks.
So, Kenji, on that line of thinking, do you think an agency, some sort of outsourced service provider that maybe specializes in both content and staffing would have helped with the extra workload, would have helped you to refine content, or could have been helpful at that time? And going forward, is that a consideration for you?
Yes, definitely. I think that would be. I didn't know anyone available at that time, or had ever heard of anyone, but I would definitely be interested to, as we go forward in this developing the virtual events, to work with someone who's sort of on top of that, because the current team is already pretty taxed with the major shows that we're doing face to face.
Great. Then final question for you, Kenji. This is, again, from Eric Seaman of All Baby and Child Corp. Our primary event is a down-and-dirty buying event with our goal to keep people on the floor placing orders. We don't have speakers or presentations. How much of a buying event, as opposed to an information or education event, translates to a virtual show? Any experience or statistics regarding this conversion? Do you think it can translate to virtual? Because Outdoor Retailer is a buying event too, even though you do have conference content, right?
Yes, we have. We're not a real conference platform, but there's probably 8 to 10 education sessions targeted to retail buyers every day. So it is a somewhat of a bone of contention. I think some exhibitors feel like, well, we should just not have those. But I think that to draw attendees to a live event these days, you really need to make sure you're offering them more than just a buy-sell platform, because as technology evolves, there will be more and more opportunities for those buyers to buy in different ways and not have to necessarily attend and spend their money on attending a face-to-face event. You've got to give them more value in your event. And so that's my experience. OR, Outdoor Retailer, is a buying show, but there are other ways to get orders written. So primarily, it's a marketing platform and a face-to-face strategic discovery type of show, and that includes education.
Fantastic. I know, and to respect the time of our audience, thank you so much, Kenji, for being here today and providing us with your insight from the for-profit standpoint. I want to just end the Q&A at this time. Again, reiterating that the full presentation will be up at tsnn.com on the webinar page. And I'd like to thank MarketArt, who provides the You Are Here interactive map, one of our sponsors today. They have the interactive map directory and marketplace for clients who want to enhance their attendee experience, add value for their exhibitors, and provide effective marketplaces for their organizations throughout the year. For more information, please visit marketart.com online. And again, many thanks to OnStream Media for powering today's webinar. And if you're interested in learning more about their Marketplace 365 virtual event platform, webinar, or webcasting services, visit onstreammedia.com or send them an email and we'll forward it on to their representatives. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. I hope you got a lot out of it, as I did. And again, if you still have questions, and there are some questions still in the queue that Kenji and Mary Beth will answer, let us know, and we will direct you to the right folks or contact them directly. Thank you again, and have a great day.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.